Now that the Six Nations is effectively over into October, it's time to look at the next thing that is of interest. Personally, I want to know how Ian Foster, an incredibly underrated attack coach, plans to evolve his All Blacks into the next World Cup cycle, what he intends to do. Since joining in 2012, Foster has based the philosophies of his All Blacks attack on the Chiefs chalice shape, something he ran during his Super Rugby days. This shape had so many variations within it that it had the offload from Sonny Bill, which was a built-in part of the move, it had the pass out back. It simply gave the defence too many options to cover from one shape. This obviously netted them a huge amount of success, with the World Cup being a great achievement. Now the secret behind it was the skill sets of the All Black forwards. They can offload, they can pass, but the key was their ability to execute the tip-on pass. This skill set was not only a way of getting through the defence and shifting the point of attack, but it was namely the precursor to their entire attacking philosophy for the 2019 season. This was used in conjunction with an area they love to attack, the 13 channel. The 13 channel is probably one of the most exploitable channels on the field today. It's best described as the gap between the second and last defender in the line, with Bundy Iaki exploiting it very effectively here. The All Blacks absolutely love targeting this channel, and we can see here they develop many intricate moves to send their strike runners straight into it. In this case, it's Rico Ioane. Against Scotland, it's Damien McKenzie, who takes the offload from Sonny Bill Williams in the plan move we discussed earlier. Their off-the-ball work allows McKenzie through the 13 channel before putting Barrett away. Jack's neighbour has been doing a very good job in South Africa's defence. The same goes for John Mitchell, who, when he doesn't look like he's someone you really wouldn't want to meet down the back alley, actually plots a bloody good defence. The All Blacks tip-on are trying to target the 13 channel, but Laws gets in and stops Vitalik before it can happen. Less than a minute later, May has to make a pretty crucial intervention to stop Reed taking the tip-on into the 13 channel. John Mitchell managed to expose the flaw in the system and cut off the tip-on before it happened. This was the precursor to the 1-2-3-2 system, the system that the All Blacks implemented to beat rush defence in their 2019 season. This was first shown against England in New Zealand's revenge mission of 2013. It could be used in a couple of different ways. The 2-pod could go in to bend the line from which the 10 can take the ball and pass through the gap to make the break. The alternate and main method is the use of the 2-3 system in the centre to actually get a 2-pod on the outside. Now, why do we want a 2-pod on the outside? Ha! You guessed it. The tip-on, putting the extra forward into the 13 channel. We also see it earlier on in the game. The 2-pod out wide are intended to target the 13 channel, with Frizzell putting Todd through the 13 gap. Todd overruns his line, therefore it isn't on. However, what we can see is the next area that the All Blacks want to be targeting. Foster knew that his new attack coach would need to be able to attack this gap, but to also keep driving the evolution of the team. Hence, this choice in attack coach was arguably the most important choice of all his coaching staff. Now, there were a few options. He could have gone for Joe Schmidt, the sensational Irish coach, Dave Rennie before he joined the Wallabies, and lastly, Scott Robertson, the man he beat, but who was also an incredible attack coach. Brad Moore. I won't lie. This is actually quite similar to what really happened. I had no idea who Brad Moore was, but then I went and saw his games and realised that he was a cross between the man who can actually understand what the Rockwell Turbo Encabulator actually does and Major Richard Sharp of the 95th Rifles. Whilst fictional, Sharp was a pioneer of his time. Both of them liked wearing hats, and neither of them were beyond using outside-the-box thinking to defeat their opposition and gain the advantage. Like using chemical warfare to blind and defeat the French. Now that's soldiering, Sharpie. This brings us round to actually seeing what Moore has done, in particular around the 13 channel. Moore has given his Scarlets the freedom to go out and exploit the 13 channel of their own accord. He's literally given them the opportunity to use floated passes, which are incredibly risky, but when used effectively, are very, very effective. The point I'm trying to make is the decision making in the wide channels is brilliant. Patchell here makes sure he moves inside the last defender so he can thread the pass through, enabling a try to be scored that really shouldn't have been. It's this kind of decision making in the wide channels that is why Brad Moore has been called into the All Black setup. Everything that Moore has been doing indicates he's been coaching his team to defeat the rush defence in the wide channels. Proof of this innovation is Moore placing his 10s into the wide channels at second or even third receiver to make the last final pass. However, this wasn't the main reason he was brought into the All Blacks. The main reason was down to the Scarlets' kicking game. But trust me, this is why Brad Moore has been brought in and how he will be earning his keep. See, Brad Moore has been brought in to defeat the rush defence, in particular that of South Africa's. The South African defence is incredibly innovative. It is based off an incredibly effective out-to-in rush that not only costs off the wide channels but pushes the attack back towards the South African Jackals. In the description there's a link describing the dynamics of the South African defence in greater detail. Whilst innovative, there are a few things that need to be done right in order for this defensive system to function as it should. This key is Jesse Creel's positioning and actions at outside centre and defence, which in turn open the space that Foster wants to exploit. As the defence starts wide, there's no use in running a cross-kick option off 10, because it is quite simply easily dealt with. This system covers a lot of bases and explains why Nynaber is so highly rated as a defence coach. But there are weaknesses. Weaknesses that Ian Foster clearly believes that Brad Moore has the ability to exploit greater than any other attack coach. And for this, he has a very good reason to believe in him. The South African wingers are incredibly fast, incredibly nimble, and not only incredibly steppy, but they can make great, powerful tackles. They are very effective at this. So when you have said wingers who are very good tacklers but not the tallest of men, you can pull them out of position and then kick, which is exactly what Moore is trying to do. This is a move from Ireland's 2014 game against England. Sexton is actually the second receiver, which pulls May up out of the line, meaning the crossfield kick puts Trimble on a one-on-one with Brown and very nearly in for the try. This philosophy is not only perfect for combating South Africa's defence, but is also exactly what Brad Moore is such a specialist with. Lyon try to make it a bit of a mess, but when they actually get the ball out, the ball goes to the second receiver and the cross kick goes in. Now it doesn't come off here, but it shows what they're trying to do. In this example, it does come off. The ball goes to the second receiver, who under pressure puts in a magnificent crossfield kick straight into the space, and boom, goes in for the try. Whilst here, we see them threading the ball through again for another try to be scored. And whilst a set move in this case, we see them not afraid to put the high ball up even when they're in the middle of the 22, going and very successfully scoring the try. This is the way to target South Africa. If Jesse Creel feels that the attack is going to get outside the backline, he shoots out, dragging the winger with him and in turn opening the space for this kick. This is why the kick off second or third receiver is so important, as it brings up the defence and then the space appears, not before. This means the kick lands, putting either the opposition winger under pressure, your winger in, and just happens to be the style of play Moore's been coaching. This example shows exactly how much freedom they have to make this decision. The ball goes out the back, and before you know it, they identify the space, and boom, the kick goes in. The ball lands in space, and guess what? The try will be scored. Now, if you could ever pick 110 to execute this game to perfection, there is one man you would pick. Jonny friggin' Wilkinson, without doubt the best kicking 10 of all time. Wilco was renowned for his ability to kick, but more importantly his ability to kick under pressure. His cross kicks were worked to perfection, and the most important drop goal in English rugby was kicked off his wrong foot. This ability under pressure really showed how good he was. Jones has seen fit to harness this talent, with Wilkinson becoming the England kicking coach. Here he's seen working with England's kickers before the World Cup final. Now if we have a look here, we see Wilco go into really fine technical detail about how Farrell needs to be holding himself in the approach to the kick. Wilkinson was not born with this knowledge, he was taught it. The dynamic of which following a film which I'm a very big fan of. That film, Red. Standing for Retired Extremely Dangerous, it follows a group of retired, highly trained Black Ops agents and John Malkovich, who aim to prove that when it comes down to it, experience trumps youth and vitality every single time. This is shown in many implied circumstances, where experience trumps youth here, and here, and here, and here. But then it brings it to this scene. Wilco trained you. Yeah, I trained Wilco. Pop shoulder. The guy who taught Wilco is still coaching. His name is Dr. Dave Allred, formerly England kicking coach of the 2003 team and a doctor in the fields of mechanics of kicking. Now, what could he bring to the table? Well, he's not just the best kicking coach in the world. Not only does he look like what Devon Weston from Grand Theft Auto would look like when he's about 20 years older, but he's so good, he hasn't just worked with Jonny Wilkinson, he's worked with golfers like Luke Donald, who've actually employed him to look at their swing and discover how they could be playing better. Francesco Molinari has done exactly the same thing, with his success coming off the back of Dave Allred teachings. And last but not least, Johnny Sexton has seen fit to employ him as a consultant as well. In terms of coaching, he is without doubt the best mind of kicking and the best English coach of any type in the world. His ability and true strength is to get kickers operating under extreme pressure, like the pressures of a last-minute drop goal in the final minute of extra time of a World Cup final. He is also a proud Englishman and has been open to returning to the England fold for quite some time. However, the headshed of the RFU have not seen fit to employ the best kicking coach in the world to actually assist England's kickers. This takes us on to the worst case scenario, and this is more worst case scenario than a Boris Johnson worst case scenario, and those are pretty bad. This scenario involves the All Blacks getting the man who would best be equipped to give them the accuracy to execute Brad Moore's attacking strategies on board. A man who could get Beauden Barrett's kicking, long acknowledged as the only weakness in his game, to the levels of Jonny Wilkinson. Add that knowledge and ability to his world-class pace, his sensational passing game, and you are looking at the player who could open up any defence. But even though you know it's not the case, you can't help hoping that it's not a lookalike. But then you see this, and you are left thinking, well, shit. Now, whereas other fans may be actually pretty happy about this, English fans, on the other hand, may be thinking, what the hell are the RFU doing? Why the hell are they throwing the services of one of the best coaches in the world back in his face? Maybe they are actually, when it comes down to it, f***ing shitheads. They may want to be, but other teams cannot be happy about this. The reason is the All Blacks are pissed. New Zealand expect to win at the best of times, so when they lose at the worst of times, like a World Cup semi-final against England, it hurts and it focuses them. They constantly attempt to evolve their game, but what they're doing now is evolving the game rapidly because they're spurred by the hurt of that loss. We are not only getting a very pissed off All Black team, we are getting a team that are desperate to win, desperate to get back to where they were, and desperate to beat the Rush defence. Moore's input alone will be mind-blowing. Combine that with Dave Allred experience and you have got a very dangerous proposition. There is one role missing from the All Blacks coaching staff, and that is that of kicking coach. If New Zealand get Dave Allred, it's all over. It is all over. Having a backline of which every single player is proficient at kicking under pressure is a devastating weapon. An All Black backline possessing this quality is something else entirely. Ian Foster needs to be given a good chance. There were mutterings at his appointment, but he has picked an extremely great set of cards and he knows exactly what they can do in order to help the All Blacks get back to number one. They are a class team of class blokes who are desperate to get back to where they belong. And with the drive that they now have and the brains they have recruited, it is going to take an awful lot to stop them from getting back to where they want to get to again.